Welcome to Talk to Me Nice, Communication Gone Wild, where we tackle all the ways words can build bridges or burn them down.
We're your hosts, here to dive into the quirks, challenges, and straight up chaos of modern communication in this digital first world.
From hilarious text fails to awkward Zoom moments, we'll explore how we connect, misconnect, and everything in between.
With expert insights, real-life stories, and a little bit of humor, we're here to help you navigate the messy, fascinating world of communication.
Because let's be honest, talking to each other shouldn't be this hard, but it is. Welcome to Talk to Me Nice, our fourth and final episode. I can't believe we have made it to the finale, you guys, of our podcast. It's crazy to believe that we made it this far talking about
we love you. Talk to me
nice. And we're so excited to be here with you guys for another episode. And today we'll be discussing workplace communication 101, navigating passive aggressive emails, corporate jargon, and tricky co-worker dynamics. I am one of your hosts, Ashley.
Keyshawn.
I'm Tamika.
And I'm Tim.
And we are so excited to talk to you guys today about this because as we concluded on our last episode, we kind of tiptoed a little into this next episode by talking about workplace communication. Now, we know we have some of those co-workers. They do not know how to differentiate between being your coworker and being your mom or dad. We know we have some of those coworkers that they step on your toes, they ruff your feathers, and we're going to discuss today how we get past it. Tim, tell me that you have about a time, I know you got something for us, Tim, today, where you had a coworker and it was some tricky coworker dynamics, Tim. They got under your skin. We want to know the juicy ones, Tim.
Well, I'll do the best I can. So I have one coworker. So I'm a financial reports coordinator at the company I work at. And we have people, in other parts of the department, analysts or whatever, that work accounts. You're looking, like searching for financials and recoupments and different things. And if something needs to be done, whether it be a write-off or an adjustment or something like that, they'll send it over to us, which is fine. Except we have one, and I don't really understand this particular person, because in my head, I'm like, if you really wanted to be she's one of those that thinks she just knows everything more about your position than you do, and that how you should do it, and you should do it this way, and why are you doing this, and this isn't part of your procedures and whatever else. And I'm sitting there thinking and she'll send an email, so if she needs you to do something, she'll send you an email, not just saying hey, can you post this financial transaction? Can you do this or whatever? She'll literally go through and give screenshots. This is what the system should look like when you're done. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's not okay. You have for one, I'm 2 levels above you. Now, I don't throw that. I mean, I'm not Mr. I'm 2 levels above you. Don't talk to me like that. But my thought is if I was an analyst and another analyst sent me something like that, it would rub me the wrong way. So how do you think it makes me feel knowing that I'm 2 levels above you, I'm higher than your team lead, or whatever? I don't necessarily have any authority, but as far as my level, the position I'm in is 2 levels above. I'm like, I don't need you to send me anything telling me how to do my job. Just tell me to do what you need me to do, and I'll make the appropriate updates because I know how to do my job. And yeah. I mean, she'll come and tell us that we were wrong about this, or your calculations don't match what I have, so you need to fix this, and all these different things. And it's funny because she rubbed me the wrong way first, even when I was still a team lead. And it's one of those. She's one of those people, when you take it to a manager, you take it to her team lead and say, hey, can you look into this? I don't think this is very appropriate. It comes back as almost well, that's just how such and such is, and I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm like, but that doesn't really fly for me. Just because that's how they normally are doesn't make it okay. And it's funny because the other people in my position, the other FRCs initially were like, they're very benefit of the doubt people. And they're like, well, like she really does good work. And I think you just take things too personally or whatever. And some of that may have been true. But over the last like month or two, it's literally like a weekly thing. Like I took a week off a couple weeks ago to work this festival with my internship. And when I came back, man, we had to have a meeting like with the three of us just so they could catch me up on all the nonsense this particular person put them through. So much so that at some point we have to have a meeting with our manager, with the three of us and her and another lady in her position to go over who does what, who whatever, and to stop all these inappropriate emails coming back and forth, mostly started by her because she doesn't really know how to communicate well. And she tends to think she's in charge of everybody, even though she's not. And I'm always like, if you wanted to be in this damn job so bad, why didn't you apply for it when it was open? Or if you want to be in leadership so bad, like, why don't you apply for leadership? Now, granted, if this person if I ever had to be under this particular person, I would resign immediately. That's how much I really dislike this person. But at the same time, I'm like, it's a tricky dynamic because I don't think I'm not saying she wakes up in the morning and is like, how can I screw over the FRCs today? That's not really the situation, but she doesn't really understand that it's like, you can't just like disrespect people like that, and tell people what their policies are and be really condescending to them like they don't know how to do their job. So that's one thing. Another thing I have, and this is on me, going back to like the passive aggressive email. So I had a situation, I guess it was actually like the week before we recorded our first couple episodes. So that first week of February, like that Monday, I had like this nasty pain in my side. So I went to the ER. I had clocked into work. I worked for like an hour and I was like, hey, I got to go to the ER because I went online, like they tell you not to do, and thought I was having a kidney stone or a heart attack or something. So I went to the ER, basically was told I had a pulled muscle, or whatever. And it was just really bad, and then I went back to work. Like 2 hours later, I went ahead and clocked back in, whatever. And I worked the rest of my day. Well, we have this weird policy here or at my work. Like a lunch policy, like if you work more than 5 hours, you have to take a lunch, and then you can't take a lunch like in your first hour or in your last hour. So it's like these weird dynamics, and then it's interpreted all sorts of weird ways or whatever. So in my head, I'm like, okay, well, I worked for an hour and then did this, then I was gone for 2 hours and then came back. I just looked at that as my lunch break. So then I get an email like the following week, once all the payroll stuff went through, and my manager saying, hey, because I work long hours on Monday with my internship and everything, just trying to make everything work. So when I came back after that 2 hour break, I worked like 10 more hours or something like that. She sends me an email saying like, hey, you can't work this many hours in a row without taking the lunch. And I'm like, okay, where is that in the policy? I don't, I've never seen anything like that. Like I literally, I worked my first hour. I was gone for a couple, and then I just worked straight through. I just assumed that was my lunch break, but instead of saying that back in the email, I was just like, okay, I was completely unaware of that policy. So I guess next time if this happens again, I'll just take the rest of the day off. And I sent the email. Now, again, like I said, this is completely on me. There wasn't any like good morning or sincerely or anything associated with the email. It was literally just like, okay, I was unaware. If this happens again, I'll just take the day off. And I had an eval with my manager like a few days later, about something else. And once we finished talking about one topic, she was like, hey, so I just want to talk about that email from last Monday. And I was like, okay. She was like, you still want to be like in management, right? Like, I think I might be the heir apparent to be the manager of this department one day if I choose to be. But she's like, you still want to be a manager one day, right? I was like, yeah, I think so, whatever. And she was like, well, that email was rather passive aggressive of you and all that, and I had to look at it and kind of, with a week detached from it, I could look at it and see, okay, yeah, it kind of was, like I wasn't really taking responsibility. It was just like, all right, well, I guess next time I'll just avoid the situation altogether, and just do this or whatever. Now, in the end, she did review the policy with our director and all that, and their interpretation of it was weird. It turned out I was completely okay with the way I did it. She just kind of interpreted it wrong, but my response was what kind of got me in a little bit of hot water with the passive aggressive nature. So that's kind of my twofold thing. Like there's the tricky coworker dynamic on the front end, but then also I myself have been guilty of being passive aggressive and, like not communicating effectively. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I think that's like a great reflection though just to be able to say like I can point out something in someone else, but I also can point out like my faults as well. I would
Mm-hmm.
say like, with the young lady that you said that, she uh she seemed like she's trying to control everyone. Have you ever thought about like looking at it from like, because this is me looking from the outside looking in, have you ever thought about it looking at it as like, hey, maybe she's just trying to help, and this is her way of trying to help, but her way of trying to help is kind of coming off like she's trying to control things, but she really just like one of those the over helper.
Yeah, and I could see it. And again, like I said, like I don't think she wakes up in the morning and is like, like how can I make these employees, these other people's lives hell today? I don't think she does that. And I think in the end, she probably is trying to be helpful, but it's just the way it comes across is very much like, well, this is how you're supposed to do things. This is how I want you to do things. And, like this is how it should look when it's done. And if it was the problem is if I was a new employee or somebody that you were training, then yeah, of course, like when I do training with people, or if I, when I used to have to distribute work, to maybe people that don't do things normally, I would send a screenshot and just say, hey, I know you haven't done this before. This is, these are the steps that we take, and this is how, I'll send a screenshot. Like I think in that case, it's totally fine. But when you're sending things to somebody that clearly has done this job for a long time, and you send stuff like that, or something that, if something may have been incorrect, that like I or somebody else did, and they need it fixed, and that's fine. But I think it comes off rather condescending when it's something that's like a simple mistake that like anybody can make. And instead of just saying, hey, can you look into this and, fix this or whatever, or, whatever, you're sending all these screenshots as if somebody just doesn't know how to do their job. And that's the part that I think for me rubs me the wrong way, and now seems to be rubbing other people the wrong way. So much
Have
to the
you
point,
ever
like
had a
I've gotten kind of to the point now. And I guess maybe I'm guilty of like, oh, that's just how she is kind of thing, or maybe I'm just like whatever. I just kind of laugh at it now. I'm just like, all right, whatever, and I just do my thing because I feel like I've presented it to the team, I presented it to the managers that like this needs to be addressed or whatever. So much to the point now where I'm just like, she hadn't really bothered me lately, but she's bothering the other two that do in my position, and it just makes for a really tricky dynamic because I think you have people maybe on both sides, maybe kind of stepping on the other a little bit. And I don't know when we're having this meeting because it's been weeks now and we still haven't had it. But I think we really have to sit down and figure out like what everybody's role is, because, you're stepping on my toes and doing things like updating things before I've had a chance to do my part. And then on the flip side, like I may be doing the same thing to you on the other side, or updating something that, that doesn't make the accounts fall where they're supposed to on your end or whatever. So, I mean, I definitely think there is some disconnect
yeah,
there,
that's
and I'm sure there's
yeah.
probably some level of guilt on both sides of it.
Yeah, I was just about to say maybe it's time for like have it's time for a sit down for sure, like a
Mm-hmm.
meeting to discuss
Yeah.
and say like a heart to heart. Now it hasn't have to be like, hey, you're doing this and you're doing that. Just like,
Yeah.
hey, you're sometimes doing this. Can you explain to me your reasoning? And like in a
Yeah.
heartfelt way to where you're kind of like understanding like, hey, because on my end it comes off like this, and I know that it's probably not your intent.
Or he can also address her and let her know that when she does A and B, it makes him feel like this. And at
Yeah.
first, it sounds like he was overlooking it, but that he's not the only one having concerns about
Yeah.
her work ethics. So if he went to her upper management and they're not addressing it, him being in a supervisor position, he has the authority just to talk to her as a, cool and be like, hey, I noticed that you really want us to win as a team. I just also want you to know that when you do this, I feel like you're over asserting yourself, and it's making me
Yeah.
feel as if I'm incompetent when I'm very much competent.
Yeah.
So maybe there's different ways that she can approach how she then addresses certain situations, because I'm sure she loves
Yeah.
her job. That's probably why she's so passionate about it. And with that type of work ethic, she might not keep it long enough unless someone who cares just pull her aside and say, hey, girl, look, I know, but this is not how it's going to go with me. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
my 2 cents on that.
And then on the contrary, when you're the other person on the other end, always say, I heard someone say this before, and they said, if you're upset, if you feel some type of way about an email, they said they have a 24-hour rule or an 8-hour rule, meaning like you don't immediately respond to that email.
Yeah.
Like give yourself a day or 8 hours or a couple of hours. Like give yourself this. You like you look at an email and you're like, oh, I know and darn well they didn't just say this to me to this email talking to, I know for a fact that I can be gone, work continuously as long as I take a break within that 8-hour day, and you immediately want to say something smart back to them. They said respond within 24 hours, give yourself a 24-hour window or put an hour window to say, hey, you don't respond to this in 8 hours for 8 hours. And
I like
basically,
that.
yeah, and it stops you from immediately, because I know in corporate America, like the microaggression, like those emails that you're saying that you sent back, oh baby, I was the queen of that. Like, oh, let me show you, because who is you talking to, right? I had to learn that, like, how she immediately went to you're like, okay, I'm about to get an evaluation this day. They're not gonna say nothing back to you, but you see how she still went back to your boss and let her know about that email. So when stuff like that happens, you just know that somebody else, they're using that against you later on. So that 24-hour window or that number, that whatever you want to set for yourself, it kind of stops you from immediately responding to something out of anger or out of, feeling some type of way, and give yourself like a clear mind to say, okay, let me professionally respond to this and say, oh, okay, I may have missed that. I had a different interpretation. I do apologize for the confusion or my mistake, or, I'm so sorry, or I apologize for the confusion of yesterday. I do know now going forward, and now you can answer it, professionally.
Now, again, we're saying all these things, but it's sometimes in the heat of the moment, it's hard to practice. It's kind of like that whole Mike Tyson quote, or like when oh, everybody's got a game plan until they get punched in the mouth, and then everything goes out the window. So like for me, in the second scenario with my manager, it would have been smart for me to hang back and be like, all right, let me let this marinate for like an hour, a couple hours or whatever until I need, because I've been frustrated with the way they interpret that policy for years. So, but still, instead of me immediately reacting and saying, well, next time I'll just take PTO or whatever, it's like, if I could have taken an hour, I could have come back and said, well, hey, I've always interpreted that, to mean this, or can we discuss, whatever. Anyway, I could have shaped it an hour or two later when the initial rush or the initial anger or frustration with it would have passed. I could have come back with a much better email, maybe asked for some clarification, or even just presented my side without just immediately saying, well, I'm just going to take my ball and go home, or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say, because listening to the situation, I feel a little bit of anger for you. I had the situation at an establishment. I want to say that because I want to, I'm trying not to call them out, but I had a course. Let me say that. I had a course, and I knew that I was pregnant when I signed up for the session. And during the time, I found out that I was high risk. And so I went to somebody to talk to them about excusing me or how to go about, because I had invested into the session. And their response was, well, you knew you was pregnant when you started it.
Ooh.
Wow.
And I just like, in the moment,
Lost it.
No. In that moment, I had to take a deep breath, because I know once my ears get hot, like I know my triggers. And when I feel that, I just step back, because if I don't, I can't apologize for what happens next. So there's a proper way, even with what you're going through, there's a proper way to go about that. And if you go about it the proper way, like you saying you don't know what you're going to do until you get punched, you can say whatever until you get punched. But even if I get hit, at this point of where I'm at in my life, I still got to take a step back, because I had to think of everything I had worked for so hard to get to where I'm at today, to allow anybody, I don't care where they're at, to try to deter me from where I'm trying to go. So it could be a slap, a kick, some verbal abuse. I still have to, if it ever makes me feel shocked and my ears get red, I already know, just step back.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm
feel like
sorry, Keyshawn, and
going back.
I just want to apologize to Tim. Tim, I want to apologize to you on behalf of those people that's trying you, because you're really intelligent.
Um,
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, it's
no,
probably karma for something I probably tried somebody in the past, and I'm just paying for it now.
Being a person. Nah, it could just be that's how it is. In any job that you occur or any job you go to, really, like you're just gonna have people like that you got to deal with. Honestly, I think there's no escaping it. And like I also think like like going back and forth with somebody usually doesn't like result in like a positive outcome as well too. Like I know like you're not supposed to let nobody like push you around and stuff like that, and I completely agree on that aspect. But a lot of times, like taking the higher role is better than, what I'm saying, just like, just going tit for tat with somebody, especially in like, like a professional setting.
I definitely agree with that. Just the with Keyshawn, it's just like learning how to take the high road, because I think it's so easy, and I think it goes hand in hand with just taking that break and just saying, hey, how to, and I had to learn to do this too in corporate America, is like learning to respond back to someone, and I call it eating them up, but eating them up professionally, to where it's just saying, like, for instance, in your case, it will say, hey, thank you for thank you for reaching out to me regarding this. I wasn't it seems that we may have two different views on the policy. I highlighted the policy below, and from my perspective, it seems that the policy is saying X, Y, and Z. Please, if you can give me any clarification, if you could give me any clarification on why, I don't want to say why you believe, but if you can give me any more clarification on the policy, I would love to hear it. You're basically saying like, hey, I just want to let you know that I wasn't just disrespecting the business. I wasn't just going against the grain. Because I know how it can feel, because you like, hey, first of all, I took on my break, I went to go handle business and then rushed here back through traffic to get back to work to continue to help you guys get to the common goal of whatever the business day is. And then I get back here and you're telling me I'm working too long. Like you're listen, today has already been a long day. Please stop picking with me so I can understand that frustration. And I have this notion which is like, I of course you don't want to just say, you don't want someone to come at you and then make it look like you're just going against the grain, because that's obviously in this case not what you're doing. You just had a different perspective on the policy. So it's kind of just saying like, hey, I just want to give clarification. I don't want to look like I'm just disrespecting policy. From my standpoint or my view, it looked like the policy said this is why I took my break and then came back and just decided to finish my day that way, as assuming that the time that I took was my break, even though it was earlier than what my normal time was. My time is that I usually come in. If this is not how we can do things, then I would know going forward. So it's kind of letting them know like, hey, I read the policy as well. This is my perspective on it. If it's something different, please let me know. And then if it is what you're saying, then going forward, then I know what I have to do going forward. So it's kind of saying, hey, I hear what you're saying, but I want you to also know that this is not me just going against the grain. And then now we both are on one accord going forward, if that makes sense.
Just a short history of office talk. In the early workplaces, bosses gave orders with little explanation. Workers just had to figure it out, as we just heard, right? Then the post-war too, businesses introduced buzzwords like synergy and best practices. During the email era, passive-aggressive emails and vague instructions became common workplace struggles because how do we really figure it out? And the remote work challenges are digital communications like Zoom. They made the tone harder to read because you could tell a lot by just a person's tone. And future trends, company now focuses on clear communication and emotional intelligence. And just a point that I want to highlight is how to handle tricky emails in workplace politics. If you get a passive aggressive email, like per my last email with quotes, it really means that you didn't read what they wrote the first time. And a positive response is just to stay professional. Say thanks for the reminder. I'll take another look and follow up later.
I like that. I really like that point. That was good.
Because we go keep it classy, you know?
Yeah,
We still gonna keep
very.
it classic, big facts. I mean, absolutely. I was like,
And then, Keyshawn, did you have anything to add on the background?
research wise, the message itself can be completely disregarded if the delivery isn't where it should be. Research wise, so like in a corporate or professional setting, if somebody says something aggressively or doesn't know how to like deliver a message, then the message itself, you know what I'm saying, can be completely just forgotten about. And the only thing that will be focused on is how that person was speaking or how that person portrayed the message, you know. So that's just something to remember whenever somebody is trying to inform somebody on something or inform somebody on something in like a rude way or, you know, an aggressive way. It's like at the end of the day, you still got to let somebody know, you know what I'm saying, like what it is that you're trying to let them know, like, you know. So if you're not letting them know in the proper way or the right way, then the entire thing can be just forgotten about, you know. So that's something that should be remembered, and that is something that should always be taken into consideration.
I really like that because you're basically saying that, like, hey, no matter what the point that you was trying to convey or get across, once you were aggressive, once you were nasty, once you said something that you know that will, offend the other person, they have now forgot everything else that was in the message other than per my last email or whatever it
Exactly.
was that you said beforehand. So that's a really great takeaway. And at the end of the day, like Keyshawn said, at the end of the day, you want whatever the point or whatever it is that you're trying to convey, you want that to be heard. You want that to be taken in. And if you put
Yeah.
anything in the way of that, that all goes away. Well, I think, guys, this concludes our final and last episode of Talk to Me Nice podcast, Communication Gone Wild. It has been a great season, you guys. How are you feeling?
Feeling
Pretty good,
good,
pretty
you
good.
know. Ready for the summer.
Okay.
Thank you guys for tuning in with us. We hope that our real life scenarios, our real life situations as students, as people in corporate America, as people, as moms and relatives, we hope that you hear us just from a peer and know that we are all in the battle of communication together. And we hope that the things and the knowledge that we brought to the table on this season help you in your future endeavors in corporate life and friendship life and in relational life. Thank you guys for tuning in. And that's a wrap. Woo!
All right. See you
Bye.
guys.
Yeah. See y'all later.